you for staying with us, ladies and gentlemen. We've had a bit of power blackout, and as Senator says, the government is threatened by this conversation. I'm not so sure about that. Keep sending your comments, keep on sharing your feedback. And if you had sent me feedback, you might not want to. You might want to please repeat because I lost them because of the power blackout. And as you were saying, Wakili,
that it is the opposition together with their friends in the business sector who are sabotaging government.
do not say things you're not sure of.
Yeah, if I will substantiate, then let the senator better substantiate as well. Yes, I was saying that the question of development has been dealt with sufficiently in the Constitution. That there is a reason why money is sent to the counties and on schedule by the national government. If you will recall, Esther, is that the current administration has already disbursed money to the counties and on schedule. So the question, but then you must remember that what is disbursed is about 15% of the national revenue. So there is about 80%, if not 85%, that still remains with the president. That is why, in my view, it is my considered view, that we must not have antagonistic political relationship between the president and the leaders at the divorce units or leaders at, say, the National Assembly. Because out of the 85% that still remains with the national government, there is so much it can help do in opening our localities. So when the president visits regions, when he came to Luo Nyanza, I saw him sit down with the elected leadership in Luo Nyanza. Senator's governor, Honorable Chila Yako, had to travel all the way to Kisumu to have a sit down with the president and plead for development as well. I don't know why Senator seems to be forgetting that, because his governor, who is a lawyer of good standing, appreciated that because of what is sent to the counties may not be enough, and there is need to open up that part of the world, he may have to therefore engage with the government in making sure that out of the 85% that remains with the national government, he is able to get some to do things like opening up of the Sony Sugar Factory that is in the senator's backyard. Thank you.
All right, Senator, what do you have to say of this? Do you think is it a good show of the president moving around, looking like he wants to stamp his political footage in these counties? Is it a way that looks like he's going for Raila Odinga stronghold? What do you think about his development tours, as he calls them?
This is where I might feel very young and also perhaps not so well placed to actually offer advice, but I hope that my advice can be taken. The president should just sit down and get his work done. Is to stop campaigning.
Is he campaigning?
That is what basically is doing. Because if you know, when you are vying for the presidency, whether you were in Azimio or whether you were in Kenya Kwanza, the basis for your campaigns was basically what we call a manifesto. You went around the country for some people, actually 10 years, but for others, maybe 2 or 3 years, and sold a manifesto that you wanted to be able to implement. So if we are still seeing the president today going around the country and again starting a bunch of new promises, what are those promises for? Because they were made before. Those promises had been made. In fact, the biggest element of this is something called Asla movement, and it was called Asla Nation. And you remember very well that when we looked at this Asla Nation thing, vijana waliambiwa kwamba Biblia ikienda chini, bei ya unga itakuwa 100. These are not my words. These are the president's words. Biblia ikienda chini, you will start being able to afford your basic assets to be able to do business. Not my words, the president's words. Okay? So before you start walking around, we need to do what we call a basic assessment of whether everything that was promised has even taken off. The most rudimentary project that the president has prides himself in, right, with regards to initiating a program that will respond to the hustler menace of economic emptiness, is Hustler Fund. If you start assessing the Hustler Fund today, in fact, I'm very proud of being in this studio. However much you're feeling that you're small and young, I'm also very proud of you for the work you're doing, because you are the real hustler. Now, if you assess all hustlers, what is the kind of operation that they do in terms of doing business? Okay? A simple asset that a hustler needs to do business in the mind of the president was a wheelbarrow. Is that not true?
True.
It's true. How much does a low frame wheelbarrow cost in this country? 4,500. A high frame wheelbarrow costs about 17,000. If you go to Hustler Fund, can a hustler borrow and be able to buy a wheelbarrow and do business? You told a hustler that if you're going to be able to run a car wash, you will be able to be fined within the time that, it is already a year since election. That is something that we must wake up to. The president only has 4 years. If you look for a hustler who is going to start a car wash in Mathare or in Dandora, what is the basic asset for that hustler to be able to do their business? The basic asset for them is basically hiyo mtungi ya 3,000 liters. How much does he go for in the market? 20,000. Bado hajadunua hiyo spray ya 60,000 ya kupiga maji. Hajatengeneza ka small kibanda ya kuweka hiyo kitu. So this hustlers total amount that they need even just to start a simple business is about 200,000. Hustler Fund can only be able to give them about 1,000 shillings. Because this is a Hustler Fund that was concocted on the basis of what we call Fuliza, which the president did not understand, because the Fuliza Fund was actually a fund that is an overdraft for people who want to solve their small problems. These are hustlers kama mtu wa mjengo ambaye anajua, I have gone to do mjengo work, I can only borrow up to 100 bob or up to 200 bob, nikule chapati mandondo, ndalipa jioni 700 bob, nilipe. You get? Even you are now a hustler, and I'm very proud of you. Look at your studio. You have really struggled to put this studio up. These are assets that you need to do a basic business. How much money do you need to borrow to put these things up? I can bet it's about $1 billion and above. If it's $1 million and above and in Hustler Fund, for you to build credit to be able to ever borrow 10,000, you need 7 years to build that credit. How is that helping a hustler? Think about the biggest hustler in this country that NTSA has given us a data of. Who are these? Watu wa boda boda. Watu wa boda boda, their basic asset to do their business is what? Motorbike. How much does a motorbike that is being used in Nairobi today, TVS 150 HLX model, go for in the market? 160,000. The Hustler Fund, when they go there to get the money, and you know how many motorbikes we have in the country today, according to NTSA? 1.5 million. Meaning that they are more than any other association of workers in this country. When they go to the Hustler Fund to get money to buy a boda, they can't borrow a basic 150,000, 160,000. What then do they remain with? They have to go to Watu Credit. Watu Credit wakifika huko, now that the Watu Credit start pretty behaviors on them, wanawambia, lipa 23,000 kwanza ya deposit. Lipa another 25,000 ya kuchukua mambo ya sijui insurance tracker, all this. Already they want about 50,000 from this hustler, and then they are subjected to about a loan of about 180,000, and with about a monthly interest rate of 5 to 10%. By the time this person pays for their motorbike, okay, they are paying over 70,000 worth of interest. Are you not killing these people? So if you haven't sat down and make sure that this Hustler Fund actually does work for the people that you promised, How do you want Eddie to celebrate you when you come to Migori?
Kwa hivyo
How do you want Eddie to celebrate you when you come to Bungoma and start promising that, you know, I want to build your house, you know, I want to make sure that you have got a pension fund. You talk about these things. What is the biggest pension for hustlers in Mathare? Do you know who are the biggest borrowers? Ni mtu wa kiosk. That is why they have opened a book. Kila siku asubuhi akitaka kuchukua mayai, anaenda hapo anasema niandikie mayai 2, niandikie mkate moja, nitalipa jioni. That's the basic place that they borrow from, more than the hustler place that you talked about they borrow from. What is the biggest pension for a typical hustler today in Kenya? The biggest pension for these people are their children. I take my child to school so that one day they'll build me a house. I take my child to school so that one day they'll get me an insurance fund. If you are a president and don't understand these things, and still you go around the country in the midst of serious economic emptiness of young people, this is why you see the people of Kenya get annoyed with him. The people of Kenya start getting frustrated with him because he's not responding to the things that he said he's going to respond to. And this must be called out as such. Sit down and get the work done. Right. Stop these campaigns.
Kwa hivyo hii stories zake za development funds ni
stories za jaba kabisa.
Rojo na jaba.
Jaba kabisa.
What do you think, viewers? Talk to me, tell me. What do you think about the president's development funds when he's opening hospitals, commissioning for roads in different parts of the country? Does the local Mwananchi feel the impact of his projects amidst and his entourage amidst this economic recovery process? Now, to you, Wakili, the president, during his campaign time, walked around the country to the 47 counties, creating economic hubs. And right now, most people are viewing his movement as a campaign tour. Now, is he going to get time to serve the economic hubs that he promised the people during the campaign period?
For economic transformation to happen, certain parameters must be realized. One of them is an environment of peace and calm. But you realize that is why the Constitution, in its infinite wisdom or lack of it, at Article 140, envisaged that if there is a post-election dispute, especially grievances attached to how elections was conducted, then there was a legal framework that the Constitution envisages through which such disputes may be resolved. But as you might be aware, is that up to about 2 months or 3 months ago, we were still in the streets trying to litigate grievances of a lost election. 1 year after people had gone to the ballot. Those are things that may stop a country from realizing its economic potential. So now that we have our senator here, and you remember that my senator here is one of the people who told Baba that they had ethical hackers. Then they also duped Baba into saying that there was an insider at IEBC who was going to volunteer information on how election was.
The whistleblower.
The whistleblower. And if there was a story at Jaba, it was the story that was being perpetuated by my senator here. Because, one, if that was true, with the immense resources at the disposal of both of Azimio and generally, and my senator in particular, they would have executed that story intelligently. As a media player, you remember that when those allegations were confronted by the weight of scrutiny, they fell like stilts. So I think that it is time we become honest as a people and realize that we have moved from an election. If there is governance issues that we can address ourselves to, one of them, for instance, being the question of the reconstitution of the IEBC. The other one is the long and lengthy process of engagement between the legislature and the executive. Those are things that should make us come together. But to tell our people that we will go to storm State House and remove a president, that is story ajaba. One, you unnecessarily charge young people who have been disappointed by the failed politics of the last 10 years. So when you tell them that you're going to eject a president, and some of them I don't have voted for that president, and legitimately so, because they have that right. But then when you incite them against a new administration, you undermine that administration and you stop it from delivering on its mandate. And so to come and undermine even the initiatives that have been put in place by government is to be disingenuous. Senators talks about Hustler Fund. I will tell you this, that you see Senator in a good suit and a tie. As you see him, he trained in the US. So he is not your ordinary kawaida young person. There are young people who have not had an opportunity to even go to school, leave alone flying abroad. So that some of these young people only need 500 shillings to get life going, to be able to do their small time businesses, to be able to go to their Juakali. These young people can also not be left behind. But Rome was not built in a day, so that if we give government time, if you are willing, the members of the opposition where my brother serves as a very ranking member, were able to be honest and engage government in goodwill with open arms and say that we have moved from the elections, now let us engage in nation building. I think what Senator is decrying, for instance, that Hustler Fund, as it is being disbursed, is not enough, are then issues that he would be able to deal with because he sits in the forum where he holds the executive accountable. So that is my assessment.
Is the president going to deliver? Is he on the right track of delivering his manifesto and his promises to the people of Kenya?
I think that I am not in a position to answer that question, considering that the first 1 year has been rocked by one mass action, which was irresponsibly called by the opposition. It was irresponsibly called by the opposition because the opposition were decrying, say, the high cost of living. High cost of living cannot be solved through the streets. There are tools, the instruments available to government to address the high cost of living is not in the streets. One of them is what is called the government targeted inflation, the rate of government targeted inflation, which is set by the ministry, the cabinet secretary for treasury. What opposition should have done through its MPs should have been said to summon the CS for treasury to come and explain. Today, as we speak, the government targeted inflation stands at 7%. So that is an explanation, say, that we should have heard from the treasury. The question of debt. We have accumulated debt unreasonably and responsibly in the last 1 decade. And I appreciated when the Senator said that they are working on the amendments to PFM Act. Senator, this is my direct plea to you as your voter, that please look at sections 50 of the PFM Act, subsection 7, which gives sweeping powers to the executive, to the CS for Treasury, to expend monies borrowed in the name of the people of Kenya before that money comes to the consolidated fund. What that has done, if you look at the Auditor General's report, especially during the building of the SGR and after, is that money would leave one account of one Chinese agency to another account of Chinese agency in Hong Kong, in wherever, without that money coming to our economy. So that to date, as we speak, Esther, we do not have a clear understanding of how much money we have accumulated in the last 10 years, how much money we have repaid. And we are also not very sure how that money was expended. So when you say that all the money we borrowed, we spent it on our infrastructure, still there is more accountability that we need to see from that regard. And because my brother here sits in the right forum where those conversations can be held, I encourage him and especially his colleagues in the minority to lead from the front in holding the government to account. Thank you.
All right. To you, Senator, as we finish up, we're looking at the second quarter of economic recovery, and we have seen the Kenya Kwanza administration led by the President William Ruto's government, which has been hit by scandals of corruption. You've heard of corruption at Nyayo House. You've heard about the sugar scandal. We are looking at a mess in the energy sector. And now what do you just think is the right trajectory for the Kenya Kwanza administration moving forward? And it has even been marred by Himself, he's admitted that some of his cabinet secretaries are incompetent. So what is it moving forward?
First of all, Esther, I take very great offense when I've been mischaracterized, and actually it borders defamation. But because I've come to your show for the first time, and also because as young people, sometimes it's not okay to posture in a way that is confrontational. If this was a serious, maybe it's still serious, but I don't know how to put this. If it was another platform, maybe I say it so. I could have taken a very serious offense from what Kidi has talked about me, and because he has said some very offensive things. But I will let them go. I will not rebut them, because I came to this show respecting the idea of conversation. We cannot come here and then you mischaracterize me, or you start putting my integrity at risk, because I protect my integrity by all means possible. If you're factual about things that you have claimed I did, I said, I do, it is good that you indicate that. So I was watching, and we are learning as young people. I want to take it from that.
Senator, permit me to interject.
Permit me to interject.
Maybe if you're offering an apology,
Senator, permit me to interject.
Debater listens. When you are talking, I had the power to interject because I felt hurt. I could have interjected. But now I am cautioning that you have said things that are inappropriate about me, and I won't even belabor about them. That is not okay. And that is not how young people debate, because what we have come here to do is not to bash each other.
Subjective.
If I'm a politician, if I want to bash you, I can bash you like right, left, center. But that is not what we are here for. We are young people here. We want to learn from one another. Sometimes people think that bashing one another is a debate, but it's not. Sometimes it's about learning. Because some of these issues that we're dealing with, on other platforms, if you are to sit, they have caused deaths. They have caused many families pain. They have caused the nation a lot of resources that even historically, we have the Constitution on the basis of some of those things. For instance, if somebody gets up and says an election is done and doesn't want to question how it is done properly, we also had elections that were done in 1980s. We had no longer elections that were done in 1990s. And people could have chosen and said, the elections are over, let's move forward. We had elections that were done in 2003. People moved forward. We had the election in 2007 that you could have chosen to say that they were done. We had the election in 2017, the most recent one, that I am not a High Court judge. And the High Court questioned the process and asked, how was this election done? Was it done properly? If it was not done properly, if you're a young person and then you say sweeping statements like, once elections are done, let's move on, and don't question how those elections are done, then it's not up to me to ever save you from yourself. It's up to yourself, because even the Constitution under Article 86, and he knows he's a lawyer. I've learned from here that he's a lawyer. Article 86 was never in our in the Constitution that was colonial. It is in this new Constitution. The first article to clarify how a process should be, whether a process should be verifiable, whether it should be free and fair, whether it should be out of things like intimidation that used to be in the past. And Parliament went and enacted a law called the Election Act 2011, for which Section 44 of that entire act is dedicated on something called audit of electoral assets, to the extent that things like servers are soft assets, and we've got also servers that are hard assets that has to be audited. It is a practice that a young person like all of us should be able to actually look at and make sure that going forward in any election, in fact, IBC, that is charged by the election, to run our election, has something called the IBC Act 2011. Al-Salai knows that. Section 24 of that act purely dedicates itself to the issue of auditing elections, to the extent that it requires an internal audit to be done by IBC, and then it requires an external audit. Okay, so that when election is concluded, it's not only about, he has quoted the Article 140, but even I want to invite him to even endorse that Article 140 with Article 87 of the Constitution that talks about disputes in an election and how they should be dealt with, and institutions should deal with them, including the Supreme Court, which I do really, really respect. Once those things have been, we have gone through that entire process, an audit process, giving an audit trail of the election must be something that we live by. The only audit that we have done for the election in 2022 is only the internal audit that was done by IBC. I dare him to tell me which professional body, local, international, or global, has done a proper audit of our election. If it's a constitutional requirement, and we come out as young people and requesting that the servers must be audited, what is the problem with that? Okay, so I just felt like that was an heavy thing that, and again, the reason why I felt a little bit trivialized, my dear, is because I've traveled in this world, and I've seen some countries go down to their knees. I want to tell you just a small story, and then I'll go back to your question of how the country should go. There's a place called Soweto. It's a city it is a township. A township is basically a slum in South Africa. That is Southwest Township in South Africa. One day when you visit there, there's something called the Vilakazi Street. When you go to Vilakazi Street, there's a school called Orlando. Okay? In Orlando, during times of apartheid, kids were being forced to learn what we call Afrikaans as the fundamental language for them to be able to study. These kids, high school kids, got out. This Orlando is in Orlando East, and then there is Orlando West. They got out to go and petition. I'm talking about Article 37 of our Constitution. To go and petition the police who were sitting in Orlando East that us as South Africans, blacks, we do not want to be forced to learn Afrikaans. We want to learn our languages. Okay? The police met these young people, high schoolers, drew a line that you cannot pass Orlando West to go to Orlando East to go and petition. If anybody passes here, we are going to shoot you and you're going to die. These kids, both mixed with confidence and obeying the law, chose to just stop where the line was drawn and they started chanting. Then then it used to be the habit that younger kids from primary school used to leave Befeni side to go to the high school, because they will be released earlier. They will go to meet their elder brothers and sisters to take them home. So among them was a 4-year-old young boy called Hector Peterson. Hector Peterson was now leaving the primary school to go to his elder sister. Actually, it was the elder sister who was among the Orlando kids. And alikuwa tu innocently, ajui, ametoka tu shule kwao. A young kid crossed that line. When they crossed that line, the police opened fire on those young kids. Okay? And Hector Peterson was shot dead. This animated and angered the older kids to start fighting the police with stones. Do you know what happened that day? 600 kids were killed. 140 of them under the age of 14. Okay? These are things we have seen in our own lifetime in the country here, even during these mandamandos, when simple act of people doing a demonstration that is extremely peaceful, even for hours, you see police meeting them with excessive force against our constitution. So you can celebrate whoever you want. You can choose to celebrate Raila as your leader and your hero. You can choose to celebrate Ruto as your hero. That is fine. You have got the authority and the freedom to support whichever political figure that you want. But one thing that you must not sell is the soul of this nation. And we, as young people, more than the older generation that have come up above us, including Raila or Ruto or anybody who is older than us today, we have got the biggest moral obligation to look at what do we want for our country. You have asked me the question as I finished. How do we take our country forward? Okay? That's a very fundamental question that I want to discuss, because we are not the first people in this world. There are countries that have been in where Kenya is today with economic problems. And there are economic formulas that have been used to make them go forward. And I'm telling you today that the problem that we have in our country today are only two. That if Ruto and his government chooses to focus on, I might be a younger version of an economist, maybe not as knowledgeable as Lee is and other national economists are, but what is killing our economy today is price of goods and services. The ultimate price of goods and services in any economy is interest rate. Okay? We haven't found a way as a country of using interest rate as a way of stimulating our economy. If you don't solve that issue, this economy will continue to struggle. Because the way business people make a decision, they make business decision for every political decision that you make as a government. I asked my brother here, look at all the industries and all banks today in our country. Which bank is in the business of lending anybody? No one. All banks want to buy T-bills because that is the only thing that makes economic sense in terms of interest rates. Okay? And any business that is coming to our country is going to look at, can I be able to pay for my management? Can I be able to pay for my interest rate? Can I be able to make money? And can I be able to make that profit? If I cannot, you will not force me as an investor to start investing in this country. I'll leave this country. And what is killing us is interest rate. How is that related to the second problem of this, the issue of high taxation? Okay? Taxation that we are having today is not taxation that is based on any stimulus packages for our country. It's based on what IMF wants. IMF wants our government to prove that we can be able to pay for our debt. We have got a debt burden. I was telling you that. I'm in the finance committee of Senate, and we've done a very good job, even with the minister himself, the cabinet secretary, Juguna. We've done a very good job in terms of putting our country into a path to deal with the issue of our debt. IMF wants our president to prove them that they can collect so much money from us until we pay our debt. But the truth is, you can't pay debt by overtaxing your people. When you overtax your people, you defray capital. You make sure that no business will want to settle in Kenya. For instance, in the tax, in the Finance Act that we just passed, you are telling me, my dear Esther, that today, if you are a consulting company in Kenya that is importing your services into the country, you are not taxed. Okay? But if you are any other person who has got this number of tiers of payment to your staff, to the extent that if you are earning 500,000 and above, I will tax you 35%. I will make a business decision and you don't force me. I will simply cut off my services in this country as an employee of Google or any other country, go and open to another country and import that service. How has that helped you in terms of being able to regularize your debt? You tell Aziad that Aziad today I'm going to start taxing you for being a content creator. But Aziad and Saracen, who are involved in anything online, are paying their dues to Meta that owns Facebook, that owns WhatsApp, that owns IG. In Ireland, when they're paying these guys in Ireland, are they paying them in Kenya shillings? They're paying them in dollars. And that dollars is what has given us a serious debt burden that they cannot manage. A better way of doing this thing is reduce your taxes, encourage Meta, that is the one of Facebook, to come and open their offices in Kenya. Then instead of going for Aziad or going for Saracen, these companies that are dealing with these content creators, you will simply go for Facebook, and Facebook will pay you a corporate taxes, which is moderate and be able to have a moderate way of running the economy. But we cannot have this kiburi kwamba we have taken power. Now you're not going to tell us anything. We know it all. We can know it all. The people who are in power will always be okay. But the people who are not in power, the Aslas I was telling you about, will keep on breaking their back in bondage and dust because our country is not settled. So as young people, when we're discussing the matters of our country, let's not go for each other's neck. Let's just try as much as possible to discuss the issues and where we want, what is our aspiration, where do we want our country to go. Me, honestly, I think that this issue of discussing ourselves in the context of tribes in Kenya, right now, if you audit our public service, and I'm telling you honestly, and this is not that I'm against Ruto or anybody, if you audit our public service today, since Ruto took power, I can assure you that 70% of people who are employed in our public service will be from 2 tribes. Where are we going as a country?
Okay, all right. Is that your parting shot?
I'll leave it there.
Maybe you can give us your parting shot, Wakili, as we come to the end of the session today.
Yes, when I said that the senator misled Baba, I did not mean Senator Eddie Okechi as an individual, but I mean that the entire Azimio brigade and the elected leadership therein. Because I still believe that the grievance of a lost election, that there is how the Constitution has provided how to deal with that. And in dealing with that, there is a maxim that the law aids the diligent, not the idolent. So that if the election was not conducted in accordance with the law, then that evidence should have been adduced before the courts in a convincing way that then the court would be able to pronounce itself. When that burden was discharged in 2017, the court was able to pronounce itself on the matter. On the question of IEBC audit, which is a legitimate question, but remember, even between 2018 and 2022, when we had a handshake, that audit only happened 6 months to the 2022 general elections. That is when I think KPMG did the audit. So that in 2023, I think what is good for the goose is good for the gander. So why are we insisting that we should have the audit of the IEBC within 1 year after an election? Yet we have exhausted all the channels given to us within which to conduct all the grievances relating to the election. So I was saying this very respectfully, that, and I still maintain this position, that as we seek to keep the soul of the nation alive, the soul of the nation remains alive when we are able to observe constitutionalism, strict adherence to the Constitution. And when we only follow the Constitution when it is convenient and disregard it when it is not politically convenient, that is when a country begins to be set on the downward spiral. And it becomes difficult for us to call out other people. And in this case, I want to say it becomes therefore difficult for the opposition to call out the government when the opposition itself has failed to restrain itself within the confines of the Constitution. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
This is just my 30-second advice.
Sure, go ahead.
As young people.
Yeah, and your parting shot.
Yeah. My parting shot is my buddy here because a young person and we are going places, okay?
All right.
In any democracy and in any country that people are, there are going to be disputes. A lot of them. Okay? And dialogue in this dispute is usually the best way to have sustainable conversation. Mm-hmm. But we need to be aware as young people, the nature of those disputes. Mm-hmm. Because whether it is us or our children or our children's children, those disputes are always going to be there. Mm-hmm. And therefore, don't look at them from one lens. One is an economic crisis, okay? That spans from different things that can be about variety of nature, like we had COVID that impacted. That was a crisis. It will need to be addressed by some means. The second, we will always have legal crisis, okay? The third, we will always have constitutional crisis. Now, what the reason I'm saying I'm enumerating these issues because I don't want my brother to confuse a constitutional crisis to be a legal crisis. Okay? Because even if you've got a Supreme Court, it will only deal with issues and a crisis that have got legal problems in nature, but constitutional implication. Then the fourth one that is usually the most difficult one, okay, is socio-cultural and political crisis. Usually that's the biggest animal in the room. So sometimes you might be faced with a socio-cultural and political crisis they don't know how to deal with. Okay? So look at all those lenses when we are faced with any crisis and allow yourself to be holistic in terms of looking at that crisis. Because sometimes you can be given a 9 and he's given a 6. And you're seeing his 6 as 9 and you want it. But he's seeing your 9 as 6 and he wants it. That's the nature of this crisis that we are in a society. Because at the end of the day, our pride as young people should be, who are we competing with?
Exactly.
Okay, are we competing? Is Ruto competing with Raila? Does that give me pride? That Ruto, Kalenjin, Rigiji, Akikuyu, Raila, Aluo, Kalonzo, Amkale, and that's an enticing competition. No, I want to compete with countries that have made stride. Yeah. Okay, I want to compete with countries that, sometimes even participated in our development. So how do we move out of that cocoon of a political organization and machination? We only move from it if we allow to see our things from that broader perspective and then realizing as young people that what is it that is our war that we must fight. Right. Kenyatta and Akina Odinga fought the war of colonization. Raila has done as much as he could in terms of fighting for the war of multipartyism, and people like Martha Karua, Akina Paul Muite. Of course, some of them proceeded that war and brought a new constitution against the other constitution. Then the question becomes, as young people, is our war a war of praising Baba or a war of praising Ruto?
Or a war of
ourselves. Okay. What is this war?
Right.
That is the next thing that I would want to discuss with my brother here. Yes. Then we'll understand that all thing I'm saying is in good faith, no any bad intention.
Yes, I will.
Thank you, so Senator. As I have regard to time, I have Senator's number, and as we walk out, I will buzz him so that he has my number. We must sustain that conversation.
Very nice. Thank you.
So much.
Thank you so
for
much.
Your time.
Kabuli Masi says, impressive, young, sharp minds, insightful discussion. Thank you for joining us in this live discussion today, and that was a beautiful way to end the show today. And as we look at the past and envision the future, let us empower and lift each other up. And let's not forget the spirit of democracy. And as Senator has said, what war are we fighting? Until next time, stay safe and see you there. And thank you to my lovely guests.
Thank you.